Hello, everyone, and today we have with us Tymon Smektala from Techland, who's going to talk about Dying Light, the production of the game, some of the tools that the team was using. We will also touch a little bit on the topics of recruiting, as well as talk about building a career as a game designer.
Greetings, and welcome to the 80 Level Roundtable podcast. In each episode, host Kirill Tokarev invites video game industry leaders to talk about the world of game development. No topic is off limits as long as it relates to video game development. New episodes are in the works, so remember to follow us or subscribe and share with someone you know will also enjoy the podcast.
Before we start, can you do a little introduction? Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your role in the company, what you guys are doing, and that kind of stuff.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Tymon Smektala. I am the lead game designer at Techland, working on Dying Light to Stay Human. I have been with the company for about 8 years, actually 9 this year. I have joined when the company started working on Dying Light 1. So I have been with the studio for the whole adventure since Dying Light 1. I was responsible as a lead game designer for Dying Light 2, the following. And then I was also a lead game designer on Dying Light to Stay Human.
So tell us a little bit about the current situation in Techland. What are you guys are working on, about the recent release, and kind of where you are in terms of the team, the size of the team, and like the main things that you're working on right now.
Okay, so quite a lot of questions rolled into one, so I'll try to take that one by one. So I think it's a very good time for us as a studio. We have just released our recent project, our biggest title so far. The game has been released phenomenally well because over the first weekend it was played by more than 3 million players. As you can imagine, the numbers are still growing. So it's like business-wise and in terms of accomplishment, professional accomplishment, this is something that brings a lot of joy to our studio as an organization, but also on a personal level. The period of time where we are right now as a company is actually very interesting because we have released the game is out there, the game is received well, and now we are kind of thinking, organizing ourselves to handling what's going to happen in the future. We have 3 main directions in which our work will focus over the next months and years probably. The first one is, of course, post-launch support for Dying Light to Stay Human. The other one is another project that we have already kind of announced or at least revealed its existence. So we are working on an amazing open world RPG, fantasy RPG that is being made by one of our 2 studios, the studio in Warsaw. The Dying Light team, the core Dying Light team, is a team that's based in Wrocław. But we also have another studio in Warsaw, quite big in size, which is working on the other project I have just mentioned. The team is kind of getting closer and closer to revealing the game more officially, but as you can imagine, this is something I can't really go much into and spill any beans, but let me just tell you, this is really something unique. This is a very interesting project, and I would love to be a part of that team. Aside from working on post-launch for Dying Light to Stay Human and the new project, we are also slowly starting to think about next project for our core Wrocław studio. But as you can imagine, there are like a lot of ideas on the table, a lot of possible directions we could go. We didn't even start pre-production yet. I think this is a moment for us to reorganize ourselves and make sure that we are ready for whatever future brings. When it comes to post-launch support, it's actually, again, quite an interesting proposal for us as developers because we have already announced that we will be supporting the game for 5 years. So this is like a huge campaign that we have already planned out and make sure that we approach this wisely. We have a quite solid plan for the whole 5 years. are quite sure and we understand where we want the game to be in that 5 years period. But of course, the plans for the next year, maybe the year after that, are way more precise. Actually, the first year is like very detailed. We have already revealed chunks of it, but that's not all. We will start revealing more and more in the upcoming weeks. But the thing is that this is actually a content that will be very varied, very distinct, quite different from one another, because for the first year of post-launch support of Dying Light 2 Stay Human, we want to experiment with different forms and different ideas, and basically try any crazy idea that we have come up so far to see what works with the community, what community expects.
Tymon, let's talk a little bit about the Dying Light 2. And then this project has been in development for a while. There were a lot of things implemented there, and the game is huge in size and scope and the amount of stuff there. I want to ask you a question. So what were kind of like the main tools, technologies, and also specialists that were key for the production of this amazing open world that you've created? Like, I'm talking about procedural generation, or maybe some, texturing tools, or anything that was kind of essential. We're trying to highlight the things that kind of in the avant-garde of the game development and help build not only the current games, but also the future games. So it would be nice to hear your opinion.
Okay, so perhaps I'm not the best person to ask, because as a game designer, I don't really work much with automatization tools and the procedural generation of content. But of course, we were using systems like that. We are fortunate enough to be able to work with our own engine, which is called C Engine. And this is an engine we have built on purpose specifically for the games we want to build as a company. Techland, as a developer, have said it internally. This is our internal strategy, that we want to focus on first-person open-world games. We believe in those kinds of games because we believe that those games offer you the highest possible level of immersion. It's an open-world game. It's full of immersive elements, full of sandbox elements that you all experience with your own eyes, because it's first-person perspective. So it also allows us to create this graphical fidelity that we feel will be important for immersion in open-world games, but in games that we want to build. So the C Engine is an engine built specifically for this, but we have also, like, a part of it, like a huge chunk of it is something that we are calling, maybe not the most fanciest of names, because we call it the City Builder, but this is actually our automatization tool that allows us to create and iterate on the environment and the fabric of environment and the playable space that our environment is, very easily, very quickly, and very swiftly. The thing is that we have named it City Builder because we have developed it as we started working on Dying Light 2 Stay Human, which was a game that was supposed to take place in an urban environment, but then we moved to the other project I mentioned before, which is actually not all about cities. It's a fantasy game, so as you can imagine, the environment is drastically different to what we have in Dying Light 2. But we have also managed to make this tool allow us to speed up the process of creating the fantasy world of the other games. So maybe the name City Builder is not the best anymore, but I think we decided not to spend too much time coming up with fancy name. We just wanted to have a tool that works and tool that makes our processes faster. So what it does, it allows you to create cities or other environment using smaller blocks, buildings, even smaller ones, like specific like elements of buildings, and then iterate easily and change that easily with a push of a button, with a move of a mouse, of a computer mouse. And this is definitely something that helped us to make our work on Dying Light 2 Stay Human faster, especially that it also understands some of the gameplay rules that we have in the game. So not only the environment created with the City Builder looked nice and was creating like this illusion of real city fabric, but also was considering all of the rules that we have in our traversal system, parkour system, with measurements, with the differences of heights, etc., etc. So definitely this is like our baby that helped us a lot over the process. And when it comes to specialists, I think it's kind of hard to say, but because I would bet that for every AAA game developer, everyone is basically looking for everyone. Everyone is looking for the best possible programmers, for the best possible artists, for the best possible level designers, game designers. So it's the same with us. Like, we are on the market for the best specialists out there. Thankfully, with the success of Dying Light 2 Stay Human, this is something we can kind of use to invite more people into our studio. And this is also something that we are doing at this time, where we want our team to grow. We don't want it to grow to be too big. We don't want it to become this mega studio, mega corporation that is kind of hard to manage, both in terms of production of a game, development of a game, but also in terms of those like softer HR elements. I think we are quite happy with the size that we have right now. Currently at the studio, we have about let's say 450 people. We want to grow the number a little bit, maybe to 500 people. I think this is the rough estimate of what we want to have internally as a core part of our Wrocław and Wrocław studio combined.
So tell us a little bit about the kind of recruiting market in Poland. I know that it's extremely competitive because there's like a lot of very good studios that are producing AAA titles there. How do you attract new people to the studio? Do you use your brand, the game? Because we have this saying that the developers are still gamers and they usually want to work on a game that they actually want to play. Do you use some other elements like, a better office or maybe insurance? Like, what are the things that help you attract more specialists?
So again, maybe I'm not the best person to answer. Maybe you should get someone from HR for this interview. But of course, I also see things and experience things. And as a lead game designer, I'm also involved in recruitment of new game designers. So like I think I can answer your question quite thoroughly and make it quite factual. So for us, I think the most important thing is definitely the projects that we are working on. I think in the AAA space, it's very, very hard to compete in terms of salary or in terms of benefits, because every top-notch studio out there offers basically a very similar level of benefits and gratification for work. So definitely what you can do to excite people is to present them that you are working on an exciting game, an exciting element of a game, or maybe you are working in a studio that it's praised as a studio and respected as a studio. And I think with Dying Light 1 and Dying Light 2, we have also we have proven ourselves as being one of the top developers in the world. Dying Light 2 Stay Human, as I said, is a successful game, so it's also makes things easier for us. But of course, I understand this. I think every one of us understand you are only as good as your last project, so you need to hire the best people to prove yourself again, and I hope we will do that with the next one. But definitely what we have managed to create at Techland is an amazing culture of a studio. And I think this is something that personally, but I think no matter who you ask from Techland, you will hear them saying the same thing, that the biggest asset of our studio is the people that are working here, because everyone is passionate, everyone is creative. I think everyone says the same thing probably, but really this is a huge pleasure to be working in such an environment. Like, every meeting is extremely creative, full of goodwill, full of something quite magical. Like I came to Techland from a game dev industry as well, game industry as well. I was working in a gaming media. I had some other job experiences as well, but nowhere else I was experiencing the same level of companionship and openness towards other your work colleagues as it is here in Techland. So the people of Techland are just amazing. So definitely this is something that helps, and this also helps in terms of recruitment, because people recommend our studio to one another, and this is also like a good advantage in recruitment. I think this is something that can be observed in a lot of other studios. Like the specialists are spreading to different places, one studio or another, and if they feel that there's something good going at where they are, they recommend that place to their friends, and we see that a lot in Techland as well.
Do you guys work a lot with local schools? Like, do you have internships for younger specialists or somebody who's just beginning?
Oh, of course we do, but this became quite difficult in the recent months because of the COVID pandemic. So like it's only recently that we started kind of reigniting those programs, but before pandemic we were frequenting job fairs and meetings of students in technical universities in Wrocław and generally in Poland. So we are also present on all game dev conferences in Poland, and not only in Poland. So I think everyone hopes that with the pandemic slowly ending or like getting calmer, let's say, we will be able to get back with full steam to those kinds of activities.
So let's talk a little bit about Dying Light 2. So I personally am a big fan of the first one. I played like the hell out of that one. I'm still to kind of go into full speed into the sequel because I'm playing Elden Ring right now. So I need to finish that and then I need to go. So I have a reason. And my question is like when we see a game kind of finished, we don't see a lot of things and challenges that were happening behind the scenes. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the kind of most challenging decisions or, boundaries and challenges that you had to go through to make sure that the game is at the quality and the size that you want it to be?
Okay, so I think definitely the biggest risk that we took with the project was approaching the sequel in such a I would say maybe it's not unorthodox, but in such an ambitious and brave way. So I think we have locked down the formula of what Dying Light is as a game with the first one. We have defined its core gameplay pillars, which is first-person parkour traversal, which is first-person brutal melee combat, which is day and night cycle that changes the rules of gameplay. And we had all of this in the first game, and we had it working. We have polished that formula quite well with the post-launch support. So perhaps we should go the easy route and just kind of repeat the same thing with the second one. But we had decided to add another gameplay pillar to Dying Light 2 Stay Human, which is choices and consequences. We wanted to create a game where player has a similar level of player agency and player expression in gameplay as in general narrative. And this was definitely the biggest risk because as Techland, we didn't work much with non-linear narratives before and with environments that you could change with your decisions. And generally, set up an environment, a combinations of factors that can make your game having quite a lot of different combinations would affect the gameplay and narrative at the same time. And I think this was also the biggest challenge for us. The biggest challenge for us was to kind of design our own approach to choices and consequences. There are quite a few games out there that try to play with similar concepts, but I think we had to find our own way to work with that, like methodologies that will allow us to make sure that we understand what a good choice is, what kind of a consequence is an interesting consequence for the players. And also on the technical side, it was quite difficult for us, and maybe even a little surprising, how much more work we need to put into polishing and testing content which can have so many different states. With Dying Light 1, we were basically just testing one game in a way. We were just testing a game that could be played only in one direction. In Dying Light 2, and only in one environment, really. In Dying Light 2 Stay Human, the directions you can take as a players are way more varied, and also the environments in which all of this happens can have different states, and actually being able to manage all of this and make sure that the quality is there, that was the biggest challenge during the whole project.
What were the ways that you were kind of making sure that gameplay systems that you created work well within these new environments and inside this idea that you can make a lot of different choices? How do you test it? How do you tweak it? What are the things that you maybe decided to change or alter in order for it to kind of make sure that, you know, that some gameplay mechanics doesn't ruin the bigger idea that you had there?
Actually, that's quite a difficult question to answer, because there is no magic formula. Like, the only thing that you can apply to this kind of problem is to just test the hell out of your game and just test it in all possible variations and make sure that it works with a very strict bug reporting process and with a very strict approach to solving those bugs and then issues that arise. In terms of I'm not sure if I'm able to point to any specific like thing that we had to change or create in a very specific way to make all of this work. Of course, what helped us was applying modularity to some of our, for example, visual designs, so we could create structures that can share a similar foundation, similar base, but have different attachments on top of it, which ended up in those buildings looking different and having a different mood and different theme and different visual aesthetics. But those are just, in a way, quite regular solutions to similar problems that we just had to use en masse and apply en masse to all of the problems that we were facing. So there's no magic formula. It's just hard work. Generally, as in all game dev, people often think that game development is like easy, the best job in the world, because the only thing you do, you just play games every single day for the whole day. It's not like that. It's actually quite hard. It's one of the, like, from the jobs I know, from the professions I know, is one of the hardest. But having said that, it's also one of the best, because the feeling that you get when you are able to create something, when you are able to create this virtual world, see it work, make it work as you want it to work, and then you release it and people enjoy it, that's really a huge accomplishment and something that really gives a lot of energy and good things to you as a person, as a professional.
Tymon, since we kind of touched on the topic of testing, there is also this idea of play tests in the marketing kind of way, right? So you have focus groups and you play with them and so on. And they say that Mike Tyson once said that everybody has a plan until they're hit in the face. And my question for you is, did you feel the same kind of hit in the face when players first started playing your game? Because it's usually, I know, like in the game development circles, it never goes according to plan and everything is kind of like, so how did you work with them in those directions?
That's true. Definitely, that's true. That what you said is true. Like that in game development, nothing goes according to plan. Like you can have the best design on paper, but as soon as you implement it, or even as soon as you try to implement it, you see that there's like this mountain of problems that you have to overcome. And when you implement it and people in playtests start playing this, you see that there's like an even bigger mountain of player feedback that you have to consider. but I don't see this as being hit in the face. Like as a game developer, you are used to this so much that you don't even register this. So it's not like this big blow that knocks you out. It's just like a regular slap on the face. So of course we had that. Like the first playtest that we did, actually they were quite encouraging, but the list of problems that were listed after the first session of playtest was so huge, so long, that we kind of got a little, maybe not depressed, but like, oh shit! So now there's this much of work we need to do. I think one of the maybe the closest to what you are asking about was one of the playtests we did mid last year, when we realized that people are finding our combat to be maybe a little too easy, maybe a little too much on the easy side, maybe a little bit too repetitive. And this kind of surprised us, because we felt that we have it good, that we know what we're doing, and we knew it. We found out that we knew what we were doing. We just didn't. We just kind of lose focus on upkeeping the balance, like a very small tweaks in parameters of what was happening. So thankfully, when we received that feedback, it was actually good that we have received that feedback, and we did those playtests, because we were able to turn around this within a very short amount of time, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks. So then we redid the playtests, as I said, after 3 weeks, I think, or maybe a month, and the results were completely different, way bigger. So if you're asking me about something like this, I think that was a moment that was kind of like a little surprising, which was the moment where we left our guard down. But aside from that, of course, when you do playtests, it's not that easy to get good scores, but that's good. I think that's actually something that also tells a lot about our industry in general, that people are expecting more and more and higher quality. And if you want to play in the top league, you just have to be prepared to spend resources and time and a lot of effort to deliver that level of quality that people expect.
Tymon, this is an excellent kind of bridge into my next question. So we often talk about kind of players' expectations and what do they want to get from the game. How do you work with that? Like, do you just follow the trends that are out there and just trying to build on top of them? Or do you feel kind of the courage and you feel confident that the things that you are introducing are going to be the new norm and kind of build on top of it? Because I'm not going to kind of point fingers or name, but there are some examples when, like, there are companies that don't really follow the beaten path and they are super successful. And at the same time, there are companies that are very much into like listening to the players, following, making life kind of more easier for the player, to make sure that it's more like a movie, I would say. Like the game is more like a cinematic experience. And they are constantly being critiqued in the community for, kind of being super repetitive, let's say this way. So what's your take on it, and how does Techland kind of work in that?
So both me personally, and I think as a studio, Techland as a studio, I think we are quite confident about our ideas, but also, and I think that's maybe even a stronger part of our design process, we are very confident about the relation that we have built with our community. So yes, we listen to our community, and I don't feel it is anything that game developers should be ashamed of. It's good to listen to your community. It's good to listen to what people expect from your game. The thing is that you have to learn how to create this communication, which is really direct, really honest, and allows you to filter what's really important. So both me personally and generally the whole team, and like there's a dedicated team that focuses on contacts with the community management, but also generally having a discussion with community. We try to be as active as possible, and we try to not only like gather all of the opinions and feedbacks that are left on Twitter, Reddit, or whatever, but we also try to engage with those gamers and try to understand what are they expressing, the feedback that they are expressing. Is it really, did they really expressed it precisely? Is it really something they asking for? It's like an old metaphor about Henry Ford, that if he would give people what they asked him for, he would give them like a metal horse, but he gave them a car, because that's what he understood from the feedback. This is how he understood what people wanted, because he was able to have a direct conversation with his customers. And I think we try to do the same. We are not ashamed. I think we are even quite proud about like being open with our community and listening to the community feedback. Of course, this doesn't mean that we are steered by I don't know, like voting forms and whatever people say online. We approach that data as a data. We approach this quite scientifically. We try to analyze it as best as we can. But yes, our decisions are based or are using community feedback we're using this as a part of our decision-making process, because I believe this makes our decisions more informed.
I think it's a wonderful answer, because truly it is impossible to kind of make a game that everybody likes, and if you listen to community too much, you might get in trouble. But at the same time, if you don't listen to them, nobody's gonna buy the game.
Exactly. What also helps us is that Dying Light 2 is the second game in the franchise. So we have kind of grew with our community since the first one. We have a lot of trusted community members, which we can ask directly, basically even give them the build before the release and ask them what they feel about it, and have a very meaningful conversation about what we are trying to do with the game. So definitely this helps.
So, Tymon, I want to kind of come back a little bit to this creative process and the construction of the game, if you will. Usually in the perception of kind of the general audiences, there are two parties inside every game studio. There are the coders, the programmers, and then there's the artists who are kind of creating the vision and so on. So where do you feel game designers stand in this, in this territory? Are they more with more technical people, or are they more with more kind of creative crowd that just bounces ideas?
So I think game designers have actually the worst job on the project, because you could say that game designers they don't know anything. Like if you are a coder, you can code the game. If you are an artist, you can create this amazing piece of art, like this object or texture or whatever. If you are a game designer, you can only create basically a Excel spreadsheet and maybe a Word document, and that's it. So you really have to work hard, and you really have to prove yourself that of the team, and you really have to gain that respect to be able to lead smaller interdisciplinary teams working on specific features. So of course, I was saying this half jokingly, because as I said before, I believe I have the best job in the world. But I think generally this is a call to all game designers to focus on the professionalism of their work, on using professional methods and growing professionally as a game designer, and being able to use those approaches, those methods, those professional tips and tricks to gain respect within a bigger team. Going back to your question, actually, I think it's a good thing that designers are kind of in between. Designers, one of the tasks of a good game designer is to actually be the bridge between the artists and the programmers, being a person that understands both sides and be able to talk with both sides and come up with designs that then I miss a word, are good to work for both artists and the programmers, and that allow both artists and programmers understand the essence of the feature that they are working on, and work together on it and add to it, not just push it in one direction or another. Thankfully, at Techland, we focus on features working in a quite interdisciplinary way. So for every bigger feature, there's like a smaller kind of strike team or a smaller team that consists of animators, 3D artists, concept artists, programmers, basically anyone that's required for the feature, FX artists. So I think we kind of know how to work with one another. And as I said, the best thing about Techland is how much we like one another. So it's actually quite easy. Like it's even if we speak different languages and we have to use different metaphors and different again, language words to express our needs from a feature, our requests for a feature, our vision for a feature. I think being able to speak openly and having that honest communication within those interdisciplinary teams definitely helps to deliver the features that we need to deliver.
So to kind of wrap it up, I have kind of like this final question about, usually we ask people where to kind of how to get into game development. Where do you learn more about video game development? I think over the last, 10, 15 years, there are much more schools right now that kind of teach you how to build games. You can build projects together and actually finish some kind of little prototype or vertical slice and so on. But where do you actually learn game design? It seems like this is such an elusive thing, and when you look at any great game designers, usually they just start with a pencil and a sheet of paper and they start drawing something or creating these little labyrinths or maps and then kind of go from there. How would you recommend approaching this? Where would you suggest going if somebody is very passionate about being a game designer? How do you learn to build games?
Okay, so actually I think thankfully there are quite a lot of universities and other schools that focus on game design and try to teach this discipline within the broader game development spectrum. So definitely that's a good start, but not everyone has access to this type of school. Not everyone can go to this type of school. For me, it was actually quite easily, but maybe there's something universal about my story, which is quite personal. But as I said, I was working in game media for quite a long time. I was a game journalist, so I was able to play a lot of games over my career, and I was able to learn how to analyze those games. And I think this is a good direction for someone who is interested into game design to actually play as many games as he can and try to break it down into pieces and analyze why specific elements of the game are working like this and what the game designers wanted to achieve with specific decisions they took. Also try to kind of reverse engineer the design process, the decision process that made them implement features in a specific way, how the features implemented in a game add to the overall experience. So definitely this is something to do, trying to break down games into pieces, trying to analyze them, trying to understand why they are built like this. Also trying to ask more specific questions like what's the progression system for the main character, what's the progression system for the whole game, for the narrative. So definitely something like this. Also look at the enemies. Why are they designed like this? What kind of player abilities do they test, etc., etc., etc. There are also quite a lot of books on the topic that are quite easily available, starting with Theory of Fun, and basically there are quite a few dozen of them out there. So this is something to try as well. One thing that I'm also using, because I'm also running like a game design workshops, and usually what we do is we start with like a short lecture explaining the basics of game design, but the next thing we do is we try to create a board game based on an actual computer game, on an actual video game. And this is also a very good exercise to analyze the original video game and understand why it's built like that, what's the essence of the game, what's the gameplay loop of that game, what are the gameplay pillars for that game, for that product, and then try to translate it into the rules and the construction, the design of a board game. So also try to participate in exercises like this. But yes, as you said, the game design is actually quite an elusive art, and it's I personally, my professional quest, and I hope I will achieve it one day, is to actually be able to find like a set of golden scientific rules for game design that will allow me to apply them to any design problem and make sure that I will be able to solve it. I'm not sure if it exists, but I'm still looking for it. So of course, if I find the golden rules of game design, I will publish it freely for everyone, open source for everyone to enjoy, because I think that would make it would make life easier for quite a lot of people out there. Because in one of the slides of the presentation I was giving at one of the game conferences, I was kind of using this picture to present how does the work for a game designer looks, and it's a person that's sticked to a rocket that's about to blow off. And I think that's very well speaks of what game designers are doing at their job, because they never know what they're doing, they never know what to expect, but they have to prepare themselves for everything and make sure that they will be able to handle the situation and design a game as big as Dying Light to Stay Human. So I'm not sure if that's encouraging, but if it's not, then please, everyone, let me encourage you to try to get into game dev if you have just a slight interest in the industry, because this is really one of the best industries that you can work on at this time, and one of the best jobs that you can have. So don't hesitate, don't be afraid, don't let nothing stop you. Try to join the game industry, try as much as you can, and hopefully you will be a part of the industry one day and be able to create amazing interactive experiences for every gamer out there to enjoy.
All right, thank you, Tymon. This was very encouraging, and I want to say goodbye and also to say good luck on your quest to find those golden rules to make sure that everything works out. All right, thank you so much. It was very fun talking to you, and we'll leave the links to the game and to the site of the company in the description. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for enjoying another episode of the 80 Level Roundtable podcast. Check out upcoming episodes on the 80 Level website at 80.lv. Join our career site at 80.lv/RFP. And share our podcast with friends and on your social networks.